At the engagement party, Carl Jones wrapped his arm around his fiancée's waist and sneered at me. Thought you could marry your way from a council estate boy to York's new elite? Sorry, but I don't pick up rubbish. Amidst the roars of laughter, my self-esteem was trampled mercilessly. Just then, Carl's best friend Tiffany Brown suddenly appeared, took my hand, and led me away. Under the starry sky, she pulled out an old-fashioned ring, her smile dazzling. Neil, why don't you turn around and look at me? I've been quietly by your side for 11 years. Caught in her intense, devoted gaze, I nodded. However, on the eve of our wedding, I saw her clutching Carl's shirt collar, pleading pitifully, I'll help you get rid of Neil, so you can be with Carl, the one you truly love. Will that earn me a small place in your heart out of gratitude? So, being with me was just a means to fulfill her deep love for another man. On our wedding day, news of my death spread, along with a message I'd left for her. Is this obstacle cleared thoroughly enough for you? They say Tiffany Brown went mad after that day. Ding! Story Shots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. When I arrived at the pub, Tiffany Brown's girlfriends were already stumbling out in small groups. The strong smell of alcohol on them made me even more worried. Our wedding was just a week away, and tonight was their hen party. I had originally wanted her to relax and enjoy herself, but an hour ago I received a voice message from her saying she'd had too much to drink. Tiffany has stomach problems. Since we've been together, I've put in a lot of effort to help her get better. I feared this bout of heavy drinking would cause her to suffer again. I sighed, just as her friends spotted me. However, their faces didn't show the usual excitement and envy when they saw me picking up Tiffany. Instead, they were evasive, not even daring to meet my eyes. Confused, I greeted them and asked, "Where's Tiffany? Didn't she come down with you? Which room is she in? I'll go get her." One of them, Wendy Wilson, stammered, "Tiffany? Tiffany, she's..." The girl next to her elbowed her, and Wendy immediately fell silent. I frowned, a sense of unease washing over me. Feeling they might have gotten carried away and neglected Tiffany, I panicked and rushed into the pub. Tiffany was a regular here, so it wasn't difficult to find out which room she was in. But when I opened the door a crack, the scene inside struck me like lightning. My fiancée was in the arms of another man. To be precise, it was Tiffany Brown who embraced the man from behind, wrapping her arms around his waist. I knew this man too, in fact, I knew him to the core of my being. Melvin Smith, the heir to the Smith Group, one of York's most prestigious families. At that moment, Tiffany was holding him tightly. Her voice choked with emotion as she spoke. "Melvin, I'm about to marry Neil." I froze. So, marrying me was something that brought her to tears of distress. Melvin gently removed her hands from his waist, then bent down to affectionately pat her head, smiling softly as he said, "I wish you happiness." Hearing this, Tiffany burst into tears. She clung to the hem of Melvin's shirt, her face showing a vulnerability I had never seen before. She pleaded with Melvin, almost begging, "If I help you clear Neil out of the way, so you can be with Carl, the one you truly love, would that earn me even a small place in your heart? Out of gratitude, perhaps." Those words felt like a noose tightening around my neck, leaving me breathless. I didn't stay to hear Melvin's response or witness Tiffany's continued lamentations. As I turned to leave, I felt as if my feet weren't touching the ground. Once outside the pub, I crouched next to a rubbish bin and retched for what seemed like ages before the nausea finally subsided. Not far ahead, I could see a luxury car worth millions of pounds parked on the street. It was the one Melvin had just bought and had been showing off on Facebook for the past 3 days. By all accounts, an orphan like me shouldn't have any business knowing someone from such high society. However, the Jones family, who had supported me growing up, was a minor noble family in York. Their daughter, Carl, had once been my fiancée, a match arranged by Mrs. Jones on her deathbed. But at our engagement party, Carl had clung to Melvin's arm, smiling coyly at me before declaring in front of everyone, Did you think marrying me was your ticket from rags to riches? Sorry, but I'm not in the business of picking up strays. Amidst the roaring laughter, my self-esteem was crushed beneath her feet. It was then that Tiffany suddenly appeared. She stared at Carl for a long moment, expressionless, before taking my hand and leading me away. Under the starry sky, she produced an old-fashioned ring, her smile dazzling as she said, "Neil, why don't you turn around and see the person who's been quietly by your side for 11 years? The ring was indeed an old style from over a decade ago, but it had been perfectly preserved. Caught in her intense, devoted gaze, I saw my own startled reflection. My heart and soul stirred, and as if by some spell, I nodded. For the 3 years we were together, I cherished her, loving her with all my heart. Despite my usually reserved nature, I had even been planning an elaborate proposal. But before I could surprise her on an ordinary night, she beat me to it, saying, "Neil, let's get married." I embraced her, smiling contentedly, thinking that the surprise I had prepared wasn't nearly enough. I wanted to give her the most romantic wedding day, to make her happy for a lifetime. But today, she gave me another huge surprise. It turns out, being with me was just a means to an end to fulfill her deep love for another man. I wiped my face and stood up. The cool breeze cut through my numbed, aching heart, bringing me back to my senses. Just then, my phone rang. The screen flashed with the name, Dimwit. I answered and spoke before he could. "I accept. See you in a week." The other party clearly hadn't expected this response. After 3 seconds of silence, he erupted into excited laughter and cheers. "However," I said, gazing at the starless night sky, "I need to erase all traces of my existence. Neil Davies must cease to exist in this world." With that, I hung up. Wasn't she trying to clear me out of the way? I hope Tiffany will be even happier when she receives news of my death a week before our wedding. Consider it my final gift to her. After returning to my flat, I began packing my things. I didn't own much, rarely buying anything for myself. But since being with Tiffany Brown, I always wanted to give her the very best. So, this place was filled with her belongings, making it feel more like her home than mine. I looked around, let out a sigh, and decided to leave everything behind. I contacted an estate agent, intending to sell the flat. It was at that moment when Tiffany called. Her voice sounded as sweet as ever, cooing, "Darling, what are you up to?" Hearing that term of endearment, I felt nauseous again. Forcing myself to sound normal, I replied, "About to go to bed." She paused, then complained as if testing the waters, "I drank too much tonight. My stomach's killing me, and you didn't even come to pick me up." Apparently, none of her friends had mentioned seeing me outside the pub earlier. I wasn't sure if they wanted to watch the drama unfold or what, but it didn't matter anymore. I chuckled softly. Wasn't it supposed to be a single girls' night out? I didn't want to intrude. "Oh, darling," she said, her doubts seemingly dispelled. "Being single isn't fun at all. I'm so looking forward to our wedding day." I couldn't help but recall her words to Melvin Smith, my heart sinking. Yet my voice remained as gentle and patient as when I'd comfort her to sleep each night. "I'm looking forward to it too." The next day was our scheduled appointment to try on our wedding attire. When Tiffany emerged from the changing room in an expensive, dazzling wedding gown, all the awe and emotion I should have felt had been utterly destroyed by last night's revelation. At that moment, I felt nothing inside, finding it both ironic and amusing. She twirled in front of me, tilting her head and smiling brightly. "How do I look?" I nodded. "Beautiful." She was undeniably gorgeous, but this beauty she displayed before me was now wrapped in a layer of nauseating lies. It had become ugly. She excitedly pushed me towards the changing room. "Now it's your turn to try on your suit." I indifferently changed into the bespoke suit. Standing before the full-length mirror, I appeared tall and leggy, eye-catching from every angle. The shop assistants couldn't help but blush. Tiffany leaned against me, almost mesmerized. "Darling, you're so handsome. I feel like I don't deserve you." I looked down and smiled, the joy not reaching my eyes, then took her phone and snapped a photo of us in the mirror. A message flashed across her phone screen from Melvin Smith. Though I only caught a glimpse of Tiffany, "You'll always have a place in my heart. In this life I can't." I could guess what he meant to say next. Pretending not to have seen it, I handed the phone back to Tiffany. When I came out after changing back into my own clothes, Tiffany was sitting on the sofa, her eyes red, both hands clutching her phone as she stared blankly at the floor. I imagined she must be moved by her own grand sacrifice for Melvin Smith. This grandeur truly made me sick to my stomach. I walked over, crouched down to meet her eyes, and asked, "What's wrong?" Tiffany snapped back to reality, forcing an unnatural smile. "It just feels so unreal that we're getting married soon. Darling, are you really mine?" Looking at her flawless act, I gazed at her intently. "Just as you wish, and in a few days it will be just as you hope." Over the next few days, I accompanied Tiffany in preparing for the wedding, involved in every detail. As the wedding day drew nearer, she seemed to zone out more and more often. The day before the wedding, we observed the tradition of the bride and groom not seeing each other. Then, at the foot of my apartment building, I saw Melvin Smith waiting for me. His first words upon seeing me were, "How does it feel to pick up what I've discarded?" I raised an eyebrow at him. "Unwanted things?" Melvin Smith took a drag of his cigarette. "I'm talking about Tiffany Brown and this." He pointed at the ring I had been wearing for a very long time, smirking shamelessly. A little trinket Tiffany made with her own hands over a decade ago. She originally intended to use it to confess her feelings to me. But how could I possibly have eyes for a Cinderella like her when I had Carl Jones, who was from the same social circle? "So, she turned around and gave it to you. Looks like you've cherished it quite a bit. I suppose that makes you the one picking up the scraps." As he finished speaking, his laughter grew more and more unrestrained. I felt as if I had been transported back to the day of my engagement to Carl Jones. Carl and Melvin's smiles were nakedly mocking, like sharp knives stabbing into me. And Tiffany Brown, whom I had thought would be my salvation, was now like salt being rubbed into my still unhealed wounds. I raised my hand, looking at the ring on my ring finger. Even though I had heard and seen with my own eyes how false and ugly Tiffany's so-called feelings for me were, I still couldn't bear to take it off, because to me, it represented the starlight that had once pulled me out of the dirty mud. But now, from Melvin's mouth, I learned that even the starlight I had etched into my bones that night was ultimately dim. Under Melvin's contemptuous gaze, I slowly removed the ring. A deep imprint was inevitably left on my finger. But it didn't matter anymore. Everything would be fine. Holding the ring loosely in my hand, when I looked up at Melvin again, I believe the me in his eyes was no longer as desolate and dejected as before. "Melvin," I curved my lips. "It seems that whether it was Carl Jones in the past or Tiffany Brown now, you've used them all as tools to hurt me. Logically, given the vast difference in our social status, you shouldn't be targeting me at every turn." As his face grew increasingly gloomy, I slowly continued, "You're inherently wary of me, aren't you?" Upon hearing this, Melvin immediately couldn't maintain his air of superiority. He sneered angrily, "Me, wary of you? I'm the heir to the Smith Group, and you're just an orphan with no parents. Who do you think you are?" I took out a business card from my wallet and tossed it in front of him. "Perhaps this is what gives me the right." Melvin looked down intently at the content on the business card, his expression becoming extremely unpleasant in an instant. "Neil? Melvin?" Tiffany Brown's voice called out as she rushed out of a taxi, looking anxious. But it wasn't for me. Her worried gaze remained fixed on Melvin. Then, she turned to look at me, seemingly suppressing her anger. "Neil, what have you done to Melvin? Listen to this. The woman who's supposed to become my wife tomorrow is now blind to everything else, defending another man." I looked at her with a half-smile, forcefully suppressing the faint pain in my heart. She seemed to realize her words might have been biased, but Melvin Smith's expression was so off that she as this man's most loyal admirer, probably couldn't help but reveal her true colors in front of me. Tiffany Brown cautiously approached Melvin Smith, reaching out to touch him but not daring to. She could only soften her voice and ask gently, "Melvin, are you all right?" It was then that she noticed the business card on the ground. She crouched down to pick it up. The woman who was so germophobic in front of me that I had to hand wash her underwear now carefully wiped the dust off the card with her bare hands. In a tone used to coax children, she said, "Here you go. It's not dirty anymore." She must have seen the words on the card as well. Reading aloud in confusion, "Smith Group Chairman Smith." Melvin Smith snatched the card from her, crumpled it forcefully into a ball, and threw it to the ground, stomping on it several times in frustration. Tiffany Brown was clearly frightened by her idol's manic behavior over a thin business card. She instinctively took a step back, nearly twisting her ankle. Throughout this whole process, I watched coldly from the sidelines, not even reaching out to steady her. You should know, my flat is on the 17th floor, and I would carry her up and down the stairs even when the lift was out for a moment, afraid of tiring her in the slightest. But Tiffany, you've lost the person who considered your well-being more important than his own. Melvin Smith's expression changed several times before he finally suppressed his emotions. With a forced smile, he said, "I won't be the third wheel here. After all, tomorrow is your big day. I wish you a happy marriage and a lifetime together." With that, he stepped over the crumpled business card, walked to his luxury car, and swiftly got in, locked the doors and drove off. Left behind were Tiffany Brown, visibly distracted after hearing his wishes, and me watching this little drama unfold. I leaned against the tree behind me, patiently waiting for Tiffany Brown to compose herself. My gaze lingered on the business card for a few seconds. Then I chuckled softly. The business card was given to me personally by Melvin Smith's father, the chairman of Smith Group. His aim was to persuade me to join Smith Group. The offer he made was far more generous and promising than what Melvin, the powerless crown prince, had received. After all, Chairman Smith was offering me real benefits, while Melvin was still just a young master who had to ask his father for money every month. Looking at it this way, considering that Chairman Smith had approached me 3 times in front of Melvin with job offers, which I had politely declined each time, and that the chairman wasn't angry but rather disappointed that I wouldn't join Smith Group even if we became friends despite our age difference, it's likely that Melvin harbored resentment towards me. But if he had the guts to truly compete with me, I might have had a bit more respect for him. If he only wanted to use his somewhat handsome appearance and the abundant material assets his father had built up to attract women, and through these women to mock and provoke me, isn't that a bit childish? I had been standing for so long that my feet were numb when Tiffany Brown finally came to her senses. But when she looked at me, the first thing she said was, "What's really going on with Melvin?" I found it utterly pointless. However, tomorrow was still our wedding day, and I shouldn't reveal anything too early. So I called a cab, helped her in, and leaned down to say, "Get some good sleep. Tomorrow you'll be the most beautiful bride." Clearly, Melvin Smith had already taken all of Tiffany's thoughts. She had even forgotten that she was supposed to marry me tomorrow. Just as I was about to close the car door, she looked up at me with an unreadable expression and said, as if joking, "Neil, don't you dare bully Melvin, or I won't let you off easy." I suddenly wanted to laugh, but more than that, I felt a deep sadness. After a moment of silence, I looked at her and said, "I hope tomorrow will be the happiest day of your life." Seeing that I hadn't answered her question, Tiffany was already impatient. She mumbled a vague agreement and closed the car door herself. Before that, I saw her take out her phone and open WhatsApp to Melvin's chat. I watched the taxi slowly disappear from my sight, just like the memories with Tiffany that I hadn't yet stripped of their disguise were slowly being peeled away from my heart. Instead of returning to the flat, I took a flight that night and left. The wedding was set to take place at York's most luxurious hotel, where both the ceremony and reception would be held. It was a world as beautiful as a fairy tale, with lights twinkling like stars, flowers in full bloom, and a lavish stage. This was the grand wedding I had meticulously planned for Tiffany. But I, the groom, didn't appear at the hotel. Instead, I sat on a private yacht, with a screen in front of me live-streaming the wedding venue. I took a sip of red wine, suddenly remembering how Tiffany had clung to me and cried when she repeatedly failed to find a job. Neil, Cinderella's pumpkin carriage, and glass slippers are all lies. Just living feels so hard. At that time, I held her, feeling heartbroken. I lowered my head and patiently comforted her. When she finally smiled through her tears, I earnestly promised her, "Tiffany, you were never Cinderella. You've always been my most cherished princess." Then, I watched the girl in my arms cry tears of joy. But now, I'm not sure if her tears at that time were really because she felt happy and blessed, or if she was mocking my grand words. After all, in her eyes, I probably wasn't even worthy of polishing Melvin's shoes. What she didn't know was that from the first day we got together, I had been constantly striving to give her the best future. So, even though I was wary of anything related to romance, surprises, or emotions, I still learned and did it all for her. On the screen, Tiffany's gorgeous wedding dress made countless eyes turn red with envy. Even Carl Joan, who had always felt superior in their circle, couldn't help but say sourly, "Tiffany, did Neil sell his kidney to buy you this wedding dress? No, even selling a kidney probably wouldn't be enough. This dress alone must cost as much as Melvin's car. Is it worth it just to wear once?" The shock on Tiffany's face was so obvious. Is it that expensive?" Carl scoffed, thinking she was pretending. Meanwhile, Melvin Smith beside her kept drinking, his face dark. At this moment, the crystal chandeliers dimmed one by one. The noisy hall gradually quieted down, and everyone's gaze turned towards the big screen that had lit up. I rubbed my fingers. The mark left by the ring had completely disappeared. On the live stream, my image appeared on the big screen. This was the first surprise I had prepared for Tiffany. On the big screen, a person in a frog mascot costume was clumsily dancing on a lush green lawn. Behind it stood a grand yet exquisite manor house. After the frog mascot finished dancing, it led the audience through a tour of this dreamlike estate. The manor was surrounded by hedges, with the main building both magnificent and splendid. There was a library rich with books, a cozy and comfortable master bedroom, and fountains spraying sparkling water droplets. Further on, there was a breathtakingly beautiful garden and a vast farm where adorable small animals frolicked and played. Finally, the frog mascot stopped in front of a wall covered entirely with wedding photos. As it removed the heavy, awkward head of the costume, my face, drenched in sweat, was revealed. Looking back now, I realize how silly I must have seemed recording that video. But the others, like the wedding guests, couldn't help but gasp in awe. On the screen, I gazed at Tiffany Brown with eyes full of deep affection as I confessed, "Tiffany, darling, this is the happiness manor I've been personally creating for you, bit by bit since the day we got together. I wonder if you'll like it." I took a sip of my drink, feeling a bit uncomfortable watching myself. I couldn't understand why some of the onlookers were even covering their mouths and shedding tears. At the end, I produced a ring very similar to the one Tiffany had given me. The difference was, instead of the sterling silver ring Tiffany had given me, the one I was giving her was set with a dazzling pink diamond. "Tiffany, thank you for coming into my life and becoming my princess. I promise to make you happy. Will you marry me?" I took another sip of my drink. On the live stream, Tiffany's makeup was already ruined by tears as she shouted at the me on the screen, "Yes, I will." I smiled self-mockingly. At that moment, the doors to the banquet hall opened, and an elderly man in a wheelchair slowly entered. Tiffany turned and looked, her face showing obvious shock and joy. "Grandpa!" she cried out, stumbling towards the old man in her high heels. Tiffany's grandfather was also overcome with emotion. He stroked Tiffany's head, choking out, "I'm so glad I could be here to give you away, my dear." This was the second surprise I had prepared for Tiffany. Tiffany Brown's grandfather had been suffering from dementia for years, often unable to recognize the granddaughter he had raised. This was a deep pain in Tiffany's heart. After a period of research, I finally developed a drug specifically for treating Alzheimer's disease, which proved successful after multiple trials. The effect of the medication on Tiffany's grandfather was particularly noticeable. We discussed having him personally give Tiffany away at today's wedding. "Tiffany, dear," her grandfather said with a comforting smile, "you've married a good husband." Tiffany looked puzzled. "Grandpa, what do you mean?" Her grandfather proceeded to explain my invention and his treatment, once again shocking the audience. Only Carl Jones and Melvin Smith were exceptions. They exchanged glances, their faces filled with discontent. Mr. Smith, who was also present, praised loudly, "Neil Davies is truly an exceptional talent in the medical research field. It's a pity he won't join Smith Group. I'd almost give him my position as CEO if I could." Carl Jones's father glared at his daughter, sneering. "To think Neil almost became my son-in-law. Well, it seems my short-sighted daughter didn't have that good fortune." Carl Jones and Melvin Smith looked as if they were about to grind their teeth to dust. At this moment, Tiffany's boss also chimed in. "Mr. Davies miraculously saved my company from the brink of bankruptcy. He's my benefactor." A wave of praise for Tiffany washed over the crowd. Even through the screen, I could clearly see the changing expressions on her face. It was then that she finally remembered her groom hadn't appeared yet. "Where's Neil? Where's Neil?" "Don't worry. Neil said he has a third surprise prepared for you." Tiffany finally smiled happily, the glow in her eyes and the blush on her cheeks surely making many envious. She probably thought my surprise would be my timely appearance. Unfortunately, the large screen that had been silent for a while lit up again. This time, the image wasn't of me, but of Tiffany, embracing Melvin Smith. The room fell silent for 2 seconds before erupting into chaos. And Tiffany's words soon followed. "If I help you clear Neil out of the way so you can be with Carl, whom you love most, will you leave a little space in your heart for me out of gratitude?" All eyes turned to Tiffany and Melvin Smith. Tiffany's face instantly turned as white as paper. She kept waving her hands. "No, this isn't true. It's fabricated. It's fabricated. Neil is just joking with us." But her friend Wendy Wilson spoke up weakly. "But it is true. This is from the pub's CCTV. We were all there that night, remember? Didn't you send us away when Mr. Smith arrived? That night, Neil even came to pick you up." Tiffany turned to look at her sharply. Wendy flinched but gathered her courage and continued. "I believe he saw everything." Tiffany shuddered. But the third surprise wasn't over yet. 2 police officers suddenly entered and addressed Tiffany and everyone present. Last night, during the pursuit of an escaped murderer, the criminal managed to seize a weapon and retaliate. Mr. Davies bravely intervened but unfortunately perished along with the criminal in an explosion. The noisy wedding hall fell so silent you could hear a pin drop. The expressions on everyone's faces were beyond description. At this moment, my voice suddenly appeared from the darkened screen. Would this clear the obstacle more thoroughly? Before I closed the live stream, I heard Tiffany's piercing scream, "No!" I stood up, looking out at the vast sea, finally bidding a complete farewell to the past. Alan isn't really daft, despite his nickname. Growing up together in the orphanage, how could he be? His real name is Alan Patel, a scion from a prominent family in another city. Over the years, though we don't meet often, we've kept in touch. I've developed quite a few innovations for his company. The lad's got a knack for business. I only wanted a salary, but he gave me half the shares and keeps urging me to join him. Even when I repeatedly emphasize my ignorance about business, he shrugs it off. "You don't need to know. Even if you never invent anything again, just having you here with me puts my mind at ease." Seeing his wistful gaze, I struggled to respond, finally blurting out, "I'm not into blokes." His response was a hard punch and his little girl's soft voice calling me Uncle Neil. I picked up the little one, carefully feeding her cake, and said fondly, "Rosie's such a good girl." Alan scoffed. "Girls always prefer outsiders. My daughter doesn't even smile at me, but she acts like you're her real dad." Alan's wife, Nancy Wright, walked over in her high heels. Hearing this, she rolled her eyes. "You and your daughter both act the same way around Neil, don't you?" I took the opportunity to stuff a piece of cake into Alan's mouth, patronizingly praising, "You're a good boy too." Nancy and Rosie burst out laughing. Alan looked like he wanted to punch me again. "By the way, I heard that what's-her-name Tiffany something has gone mad," Nancy mentioned. Alan gave a cold laugh. Nancy elegantly ate an orange slice, then spat the peel on the ground. "Serves her right for treating Neil like a puppet. Not just her. That Melvin bloke, I heard his old man kicked him out. Told him not to come back to the Smith family until he makes something of himself. As if he could ever amount to anything." Alan chuckled. "Must be tough for him," Nancy continued. "I heard he's got a gambling problem now. Probably lost the shirt off his back." "And what about that Carl Joan?" Alan clicked his tongue. "He didn't take after his mother at all. Mrs. Joan was so shrewd. Spotted you as a potential gold mine right away. Made you promise to marry her son on her deathbed. And then he had the nerve to slap you at the engagement party. Oh, that Joan boy? He and Melvin are at each other's throats now. Misery loves company, I suppose. As if they could maintain a relationship without money." Nancy snorted. I looked at the couple, speechless. Alan seemed to be on a roll. He grinned mischievously and asked me, "Do you think Tiffany realized too late that she wanted your money? Or did she fall for your brilliance? Couldn't it be that she just fell in love with Neil as a person?" Nancy countered. After saying this, the couple simultaneously shuddered and said in unison, "That would be terrifying. What sin did Neil commit in his past life to deserve her love? She'd be better off just wanting his money." I picked up Rosie and walked away quickly, afraid their madness might be contagious. "Careful, careful, careful." A series of voices, like firecrackers, came bursting towards me. The newcomer was also afraid of bumping into me. To be precise, they were afraid of colliding with Rosie in my arms, so they made a sharp turn and ended up slamming into the wall. Rosie, as if she had witnessed this a million times before, added a sound effect, boing. I looked at Lauren Thompson plastered against the wall, feeling my temples throb. Lauren slowly peeled herself off the wall. The cake she had been carrying was now smeared all over her chest, the colorful frosting heaving dramatically with her labored breathing. I coughed and averted my gaze. "Auntie," Rosie giggled. "The cake went splat." Lauren looked like she was about to cry. Alan Patel and Nancy Wright were already used to Lauren's clumsiness. They took Rosie to play elsewhere, leaving me alone with Lauren. I knew they were trying their best to set me up with Lauren, but with Carl Joan before and Tiffany Brown after, I had developed a real fear of women. I had told Lauren this when she first confessed to me, but she had surprisingly widened her eyes and asked, "In your eyes, do I even count as a woman?" That response had left me coughing for half an hour. It had been 2 years since I came to Bath, and this was how Lauren and I had been getting along, chaotically. She was like a cannonball, forcefully barging into my life. Every time I tried to persuade her not to waste her time on me, she would furrow her brow and ask, "Then why don't you quickly invent a potion that will make me fall out of love with you? I'd be the first to drink it. Is it my fault you can't come up with one?" Her logic was impeccable and I had no rebuttal. So, on my birthday, she naturally took charge as the hostess. Even though the cake was ruined, I could still see the necklace hidden inside the cake. I stared at it for a while, unable to determine what material it was made of. Lauren watched me for a moment, then said, "Surprise!" I nodded, "Thank you." This surprise was truly surprising. Lauren dug the necklace out of the sad remains of the cake, and I finally saw that it was made of small stones of different colors and shapes. It was evident that each stone had been carefully selected and polished. To be honest, I was a bit touched. But then, Lauren scratched her head and said, "Don't get too emotional yet. I didn't make this myself. I bought it from a street vendor, 2 for a tenner. It's not your actual birthday gift. I just thought it would be unromantic not to put something in the cake." Well, I had gotten emotional too soon. So what's my actual gift? I asked. Given the atmosphere, it seemed odd not to inquire. It's, Lauren began. Neil, a voice, surprised to the point of disbelief, interrupted Lauren's words. My expression turned cold. As I turned around, Tiffany Brown indeed rushed towards me. She was laughing, crying, and shouting, Neil, you're not dead. You're really not dead. I dodged her attempt to hug me, looking at her as if she were a stranger. Neil. Tiffany had aged considerably. Though she was 2 years younger than Lauren, she looked a decade older. It seemed these past 2 years hadn't been kind to her. I was wrong. I was foolish, thinking what I couldn't have was the best. But only after you left did I realize my true feelings. Neil, I truly love you. Can we start over? This time, I'll be the one pursuing you. I'll give you the very best. Will you marry me? Lauren made a retching sound beside me. Tiffany seemed to notice Lauren for the first time, glaring at her fiercely. Who are you? What's your relationship with Neil? Lauren waved her hand dismissively. Never mind my relationship with my boyfriend. I just want to ask this lady, you say you want to pursue my fiancé, but can you buy my husband an estate? Or perhaps resurrect his deceased parents? Oh, I know you can make rings, can't you? But apparently only one. Giving this one and that one, worth even less than this 2-pound necklace in my hand. I looked at Lauren, listening as she escalated my status from boyfriend to fiancé and then straight to husband. I belatedly realized that she had just said the stone necklace was 5 pounds for 2 earlier. Hearing her words, Tiffany's face turned deathly pale. That ring. I've already returned that ring to you. It was Alan who had thrown it to her at that wedding. I'm sorry, Neil. Tiffany wept profusely, seemingly filled with regret. Please forgive me. How can I prove that I love you? Tell me how to prove it. I'll do anything. Lauren stood in front of me, shielding me. If you love him so much, then stop nauseating him, sister. I couldn't help but interject. She's younger than you. Lauren's eyes widened as she looked at me, then back at Tiffany, delivering a sharp assessment. Without Neil's affection, she's indeed aged prematurely. Hearing this, Tiffany burst into loud sobs. She frantically grabbed her hair. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Neil loves me. You're just a wicked woman who stole my husband. In an instant, everything changed. She somehow produced a knife from nowhere and lunged at Lauren with a crazed, hateful expression. I'll kill you. If I kill you, Neil will come back to me. Ah! While she was ranting, I swiftly kicked her down. Simultaneously, I pulled Lauren behind me. Do you enjoy pretending to be mad? I looked down at the incredulous Tiffany. She probably thought that no matter what she did, I would still protect her. She clearly hadn't expected me to harm her for another woman. But wasn't all of this exactly what she had asked for? Step by step, I heard Lauren calling the police behind me. Soon, the police arrived. Tiffany's parents came too. When they saw me, their faces turned red with embarrassment, as if they wanted to say something. Lauren stood in front of me again, addressing the family of 3 coldly and expressionlessly. Do you want to reunite at the police station or meet at the hospital? My face remained equally impassive. Did they really think that by allowing Tiffany to come and act crazy in front of me, it would make me go back to pampering their daughter and consequently benefit them again? They'd be better off dreaming. The police took all 3 of them away. Before Tiffany left, I finally saw genuine regret in her eyes. But it was too late. Far too late. Lauren let out a sigh, turning to look at me, still with a wooden expression. You asked me earlier what surprise I had for you, right? I was slow to react. Paige. Lauren suddenly hooked her arms around my neck and kissed me on the lips. To be precise, it was more of a bite. She really didn't know how to kiss. After a while, she pulled away, panting heavily. Well, she didn't know how to breathe while kissing either. Caught off guard by her sudden move, I had forgotten to breathe too, and my face was now flushed red from the lack of air. This is the birthday surprise. She didn't say another word, turning to look at the messy cake. I stood there dumbfounded for a moment before crouching down beside her, tentatively asking. The kiss was a spontaneous idea, wasn't it? This cake was actually the real birthday gift. Lauren's body stiffened. But you smashed it. Lauren stiffened again. So to save face, you changed it to a kiss. Lauren pressed her lips together. I chuckled softly, and just as she was about to explode, I leaned in and kissed her. The sunlight was perfect, and happiness arrived just in time.